Hello everybody, Grateful Trekker here, and I hope you're all having a grateful day. Today, I want to do a video on trip planning. Now, as most of you guys know, I have two boys, young boys that I take with me on my hikes. They're 10 and 12 years old, so obviously I'm not through hiking, but we do section hike. We've only gotten one section of the actual Appalachian Trail done, but we do a lot of other stuff too. We don't just pigeonhole ourselves into only the Appalachian Trail. Especially now that spring's starting to get here, it's gonna get pretty crazy crowded. But I do have some trips planned for the trail. And I want to kind of go over with you some of the tools that I currently am using to plan these trips. So obviously there's going to be maps involved, but there's a whole lot more research that goes into it. It's not just pick an entry point, pick an exit point, and go. Yes, you can do that, but there is a lot more that goes into it. And that's what we're going to get into on this video. All right, so let's kind of break this down into sections of what I would do when planning a trip, whether it just be a weekend trip or an actual section hiking trip. And as an example, we will be actually doing an actual planning for a future section hike trip that I am going to be going on fairly soon. So first things first, I don't start with the map. I start with weather forecasting. Now, you might say, well, you can pretty much hike in anything. And yeah, you can. And especially if you're section hiking, you can plan ahead for pretty much anything. However, if you're only going for 2 or 3 days and it's going to rain every single one of those days, and you have the option of doing it the following week or maybe even during the week and avoid that weather, then why not? So, I'm not saying I always plan around the weather. Like if I'm doing a 3-day or 3-night trip and it's supposed to rain like one of the days, so what? No, as opposed to most people, I would actually rather just hike while it's raining than have it just pour rain later in the evening when I'm trying to cook my food or set up my tent or even gather firewood if I'm going to have a fire that night. So, but weather is going to be what it's going to be. So going into that, since it is still winter, one big thing to take into consideration is that if it does rain all day, you are going to want to check to see if it's going to be freezing at night. Because if you're soaking wet and it's freezing at night, then you could have some problems. So weather is a very, very important part of trip planning, especially when you live in the more southern states during the winter, because then you can get the rain followed by freezing temperatures, which equals hypothermia more often than not. Now, if you live up north when it's just going to snow during the day and then you're setting up in the snow, you're fine. You're not really wet. The snow doesn't act the same way on your clothes and your pack as just rain. So take that into consideration. Next, you are going to want to have at your disposal some good planning guides or maps. This particular one, which we will get into in a little bit, has mileage and a slight topographical map on one side, also on the other side. And it shows the shelters and some of the other kind of designated camp areas. But it's not the be-all, end-all. It's a very nice, handy pocket guide to have. I do recommend bringing it. This is the state of Georgia one. They sell one for each state. They're not very big. They don't really weigh anything. And it's good to have, especially, when you're trying to plan where your entry and exit points are. But like I said, it's not the be-all, end-all. So this is the map I was talking about. It is the state of Georgia official section map. And as you can see, it starts down here with the approach trail up to Springer Mountain and continues all the way up to the North Carolina border. It shows all of the different shelters, and on the back it does have some slight elevation information and distance. I don't know if that's going to pick up. Distance between different highlights, points, camps, and where water is. So this is a good thing to have on the trail. And it's a good one to do a preliminary, some of your preliminary research on for trying to determine how many miles you're going to do in a day and where you might camp. But the where you might camp part is not as intuitive on this particular map as you might think, because there are a whole lot of campsites that are not on this map. You can pretty much camp in any established campsite, remember, not just the actual designated ones that are on this map. So there are other applications that you can get. I downloaded this online. So this is Appalachian Trail in Georgia. It's an Appalachian Trail hiking guide, and it has these particular sections: Springer Mountain to Hightower Gap, etc. And as you go through, it gives you a detailed account. Go in here of what you're going to be doing. So starting at your 0 mile and elevation and all of the different points of interest. So so you can actually track, how much elevation you're going to be doing in accordance with the miles, and you can look to see where these points of interest are. It also does come with topographical maps and, more importantly, an even more detailed elevation meter down here. So this makes trip planning a lot easier, especially for the Appalachian Trail. And like right here, this 12.5 mile section of Appalachian Trail features, these rocks, etc. But as you go down, it starts getting into even more depth. It starts getting into the elevation of the summits, the mileage in between different points, and more importantly, it also shows several campsites that are established that aren't on the official map. So you can really do a lot more detailed planning with an app such as this. Like this particular one, you'll see, as opposed to the last one. Okay, so you see the elevation in this one? Pretty pedestrian. This is a pretty easy section. So this section is probably easily a one-night adventure. Now remember, I'm hiking with small children, so I'm not doing 30, 40 miles in a day. Now look at the next section. You can see the contours of this. This section is obviously going to be a lot harder, a lot more difficult, a lot more mileage, or not a lot more elevation within a small period of mileage, I mean. So you do have to take that into consideration when planning. And then that's the next section, etc. So this is a very good one. I don't remember exactly who I downloaded this from. I paid for it. It was $1.99. They emailed the PDF to me. There are a few different places that do this, and they're very, very detailed. Okay, it's CNY Hiking. Now this is back from 2013, so some of the campsites, might not still be there, but there are several of them that are kind of bunched together, so you can still plan around it and use this. Now, there are other more updated ones that I will look into. Obviously, the maps won't change, but maybe some of the camp information might. So this is just a very important tool when you're planning a trip. So once you figured out what your personal preference is on what time of the year that you want to be, section hiking, depending on what kind of gear you have, for warm weather versus, colder weather, wet weather versus, drier weather, then you can start, planning your trips with a lot more comfort and, not having to bring, the kitchen sink. You can pare things down a little bit and, pack for the conditions that you're going to be in. Now, are they infallible? No. The first section hike that we did, we had a 0% chance of rain, and we got like an inch of rain the first night. So, it rained for 8 hours. I don't understand still to this day how it was a 0% chance of rain. But the thing is, you can't just look up weather on the trail. You have to find the nearest human settlement, town, village, whatever, that has some sort of weather, attached to it, whether it be through AccuWeather or any other app, that you can find that point and then look at the map and see where it is in conjunction to where you're going to be. Don't just pull up kind of in the general area. Try to get it as close as possible. So once you have established when you're going to go, then you're going to want to plot out using any means necessary. Even if you're just using this, plot your mileage, note what the elevations are that you're going to be doing, and how many miles a day you really want to do. So say that Woody Gap one, it's a 12.5 mile trek. That is actually the next one that I am going to be doing with my kids. So it's 12.5 miles. You can easily do that in one day. And it doesn't really have a whole lot of elevation. So that's an easy weekend one, and that's probably what we're going to do. Probably going to go hit at the trail on a Saturday morning and exit on a Sunday evening. But when planning the camp spot, this was not very helpful. There was not very many camping sites that were on this in that particular section until you get to the very end or the very beginning. There wasn't really any in the middle. There was some water sites, though, access points anyway. When I was looking at this other program, it did show me that there was camping at several of these water accesses that were kind of more in the middle. So it made it easier for planning. So we can be like, okay, we're going to do, I think it was 5.3 miles the first day into the first night, and set up camp, and we'll have planned it out so that we will be on a water access point. So it'll be good. We don't have to lug extra water with us. That's another thing that you really want to take into consideration. A lot of these campsites that aren't on these designated spots do not have water. So when planning, you do want to make sure that you know where you are on that map and how close to your site you are getting, so that you can load up on as much water as you can and bring it to camp so you don't have to go back and get more. Now, you still might have to, but it's preferable if you don't. Maybe even plan a meal for that night that uses less water. So anyway, that is pretty much in a nutshell, what I do, just kind of scratching the surface on it anyway, for trip planning. Now, if it's a bigger trip, I do a lot more research. But if it's just a 1 night or a 2 night section hike, yeah, it's pretty much, where am I going to camp? Where's the water? What's the weather? what do I need to bring? So hopefully this helps, and hopefully this encourages some people to get out and really enjoy nature, and instead of just doing a day hike, try doing an overnighter. Even if it's just one night, it could change your whole outlook on how you view the outdoors. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a grateful day.